So my name is Oihyun, and I am from BeinCrypto. As the MC just introduced, Layer 2 is a big topic in the industry, and it's been a big topic since last year. If I remember correct, it was February last year when we saw the ordinals and Saga, maybe. And then we are seeing a lot of L2s actually, and those L2s are supposedly solving scalability, speed, transaction fee, and maybe the programmability issues of the Bitcoin network that is often mentioned as a hurdle from that is keeping that network from being more popular. So we now have 4 major players in the industry dealing with L2 or L1.5. Justin just said that. So I want to begin with Justin, foreign courtesy. And what can you say and explain about why you started to work on Bitcoin L2 or L1.5, as you said?
So I think the vision is very clear that Bitcoin transactions and programmabilities on the layer 1 horizons is not meant to be scaling. And what Zeus network does here is, we are layer 1.5, essentially like a network extension or Solana. We bring Bitcoin to Solana on-chain permissionlessly. I shouldn't say I'm not a fan of layer 2, but what I see is Solana doesn't need layer 2. Solana is a layer transact over 1 million transactions on a second basis. And then more importantly, we are seeing more largely demands on Solana network where WBTC was only 400 BTC minted last year. Now we are seeing almost 4,000 WBTC being minted for the last few months. There is a demand, and now the question is, how can we bring this on chains? Solana could ultimately become the layer 2 for Bitcoins, where Solana is probably the most vested social layer right now by far. And with that being said, if Bitcoin liquidity can come to Solana on-chain permissionlessly, there could be a lot more catalysts and innovation happening between Bitcoin and Solana, which Zeus is empowering this right now.
Good. So, Arwen, what problems do you solve?
I represent BSquared network here.
Right.
BSquared network is a modular Bitcoin layer 2 solution. So we are building a rollup, the BSquared rollup, which is the first Bitcoin rollup based on verification commitment, and the DA layer, the BSquared hub, which is the first Bitcoin data availability layer that achieves finality on Bitcoin. So we are trying to scale Bitcoin in the, let's say, most practical and safest way. So if we are only building a set chain solution or a rollup, actually, it's very hard to get the final settlement and confirmation from Bitcoin. It's because Bitcoin is very simple and cannot execute a smart contract. That's why we have this DA layer to solve this problem. And also, I think we share the same goal with Zeus, that's to boost the liquidity of Bitcoin. So previously, for Bitcoin, like everyone is holding them. The miners, the whales, even retail investors, they are holding Bitcoin and wait the price to increase. But we would like to boost the liquidity, and that is what we are doing now. So on the previous panel, we discussed with Aptos. Currently, we already bridged more than 100 million TVL to Aptos, so that these kind of users holding their BTC can earn the multiple layers of yields from both Bitcoin ecosystem and Move ecosystem. Yeah, we can discuss more about that, but I think that we have this shared vision is to scale Bitcoin and also boost the liquidity for Bitcoin, the idle asset, and provide yields for users.
Yeah, that's a good point. Upbit, which is the largest exchange, central exchange in Korea, has a education arm called Upbit Care, just like Binance Academy. And they issued a report back in May this year introducing the Bitcoin L2s. And For the representative examples, they mentioned Lightning Network, Stacks, Rootstock, Liquid. Harsharn, do you agree with this selection?
Sorry?
UpBitCare,
Yes.
when introducing Bitcoin L2, they mentioned examples,
Yep.
and it was Lightning Network, Stacks, Rootstock, and Liquid. They said it was representative Bitcoin L2s. Do you agree with this?
No, because it doesn't include everyone that's building on this stage to a degree. I think that it's fine because when that came out, the space is quite nascent, and it remains quite nascent today. I don't believe that we're an L2, so I think a lot of this is like more sidechain stuff. So I think from that perspective, if you got into the nuances, then yeah, like Lightning Network's more L2 than some of the chains that are building on Bitcoin today, just based on the fact that a lot of us are bridging. There's no DA on Bitcoin. A lot of that, I think, will play out over the next, call it year or two, depending upon BitVM or BitVM v2 or OPCat, whichever the consensus kind of models that may come. But I will say, you know, that's a space that has been kind of quite active since 2016, and we haven't been able to see large-scale adoption or scalability. And I think some of the approach that a lot of us on this panel today and beyond are trying to approach is, you know, it's $1 trillion asset that's less than 1% utilized on chain, right? If you think about TVL on ETH, it's like 10, 12 billion of Bitcoin. Ordinals was the first time we saw on-chain activity with Bitcoin itself. And then before Ordinals, I think the 2021, 2022 cycle was important, where you saw Bitcoin staking on Celsius, FTX, et cetera. So you know the demand is there, but there hasn't been a way for people to do it in a trustless on-chain manner. And so I think that's kind of the wave that you're seeing now that is kind of a little bit of a joke. Everyone, you know, there's like 80 Bitcoin L2s. There's a new one every day that's sprouting. But I think the thing that it's trying to solve underlying is that, hey, there's a lot of capital that is now socially accepted across the world. You know, it's a commodity that we all agree upon. You know, TradFi is starting to believe in it. It has $50 billion in ETF, you know, holdings today, at least in the U.S. That, hey, we have this. Now, how do we start unlocking this, and how do we build on this? And I think something that my colleagues here have mentioned, the L1's really difficult to scale. And I'm generally not, I like Bitcoin as it is at the moment. Like, yes, there will probably be some innovations, but it's going to be slow. So how do we meet where the Bitcoin is today and build with that in mind and build a future where we can kind of start scaling it, and not even scaling it, but basically being able to utilize it beyond an asset that we hold. Think about like putting cash under your bed. I don't think anyone thinks that's socially acceptable anymore. Just the way that, you know, Bitcoin just in a cold wallet's probably going to become not normal, and what's going to be normal is Bitcoin on chain.
Okay, thank you. So the question goes to Luke, but this is going to be the question for all of you. Each L2 usually consists of a number of characteristics like execution, consensus, data availability, or bridging. Like these are the demand for the L2 network, I should say. Can you elaborate a little bit more about your service on how you are dealing with these issues?
Yeah, so I mean, kind of, right, the consensus today is there's essentially like 4 layers or key functions for blockchains, right? Execution, which kind of today has been an area where people have been pushing more L2s to focus on. That kind of started with Ethereum, but I think it's kind of seeped out to Bitcoin too. The L2s you mentioned slightly earlier, they were more of the kind of original generation 1 L2s. I think the newer ones are much more focused on execution, just like Ethereum. Right. DA, there's a lot of great companies working on it, you know, Celestia, Avail, and then of course like around Bitcoin, there's like Nubit that's also doing extremely great work. Consensus is the area where I feel like Ethereum and Bitcoin are going to be somewhat probably the long-lasting winners. Like consensus is all about having a lot of nodes that you know, run it, and a lot of people that really trust it, right? That's why Ethereum is worth a lot and Bitcoin is worth a lot, right? There's a lot of trust on it. So I think consensus is an area where nobody's gonna probably challenge or successfully really disrupt that anytime too soon, probably. Settlement, we're serving an area called settlement. It's kind of, there's a lot of like fuzzy definition on what that area means. I think half of it serves a good amount of what most people might call bridging services. So we do help execution chains connect with each other, be able to benefit from interoperable liquidity with each other. Since for Bitcoin L2s, there's this kind of interesting situation where, unlike Ethereum can be like the default main nexus, if you will, essentially, that's smart, that has EVM, that can run things. But in Bitcoin, since there's a lack of that, like Bitcoin script is runnable, but with very limited logic. So we definitely serve a good amount of bridging, and then also, of course, it also does become hard for assets and applications to essentially keep track of the fact that they're consistent across different execution chains. So that's added on top, which makes it slightly different from just a bridge. That's why we call it more of a settlement service. So you can kind of think of it as essentially an upgraded version of a bridge, if you will, to serve some unique needs of Bitcoin today. And maybe, who knows, like kind of settlement modular services might take off in Ethereum too. There's quite a bit of them around Ethereum too. Yeah.
Well, initially I thought, since this is a Bitcoin conference, BitCon, I thought nobody was gonna bring up anything good about Ethereum, but now, okay. All right. Okay, Arwen, how are you dealing with these characteristics in your service?
Well, the technical architecture of BSquared actually contains 3 layers. The consensus layer, we are using Bitcoin native layer as a consensus layer. So all the transactions, especially the huge amount of transactions, are actually settled and get the confirmation from Bitcoin itself. And we are building a DA layer between these consensus layer, Bitcoin itself, and all the execution layers. And the execution layers currently can support unlimited horizontal expansions. So like OP rollup, ZK rollup, and even Solana VM rollup can be supported by our BSquared hub, the DA layer. And the DA layer itself adopts data availability sampling with all the detailed transaction data stored in third-party decentralized storage protocols, and with the data indexing and proofs recorded on Bitcoin.
Right.
And we leverage a challenge response protocol to achieve the finality. So this architecture actually serves as the characteristics you just mentioned, the execution layers are the rollup layers with high performance, and data availability layers store all the data and also support the data sampling and indexing, and then the consensus layer where use Bitcoin. And that's the reason why we can ensure this kind of security. Like we provide this high performance rollup to the users without compromising on the security assumption.
But do you still use the expression L2 for your service, or it's layer?
Yeah, we build a rollup
you
by
have 3
ourselves.
layers.
The 3 layers. So the execution layer, we have a BSquared rollup, but also the DA layer itself is supporting other rollups, like Merlin Chain, another leading Bitcoin layer 2 is also using our DA layer to store all the data and achieve the finality.
Great. How are you doing with your service Zeus, Justin? How are you dealing with these characteristics?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's interesting speaking, like a lot of people talk about layer 2 sidechain consensus, but they often forget about why we build blockchain in the first place. There has to be users. There has to be ecosystems. I think by far this year, 2024, Solana, without questions, has the most users on chain. And when you have that ecosystems, bringing Bitcoin permissionless on chains, it's fascinating to think about that. What Zeus does here is we enable between 2 addresses, 2 blockchain communicating with one way the others. So basically, you can deposit your Bitcoin into the Bitcoin Taproot address that's derived by Solana virtual machine, and the Bitcoin deposited into it stays within the address. And instead, we give you another version of Bitcoin on Solana permissionlessly, on chain. And those Bitcoin that you deposit into the address are safely guarded by Zeus nodes, which is 7 nodes right now. You guys can check out our Twitters, permissions securely. And what does here is that we went from bridge solution to bridgeless. You know, wormhole, D-bridge, all these bridge solutions could potentially become bridgeless, you know, on-chain verify. And there are so many more use cases here is that we can enable room ordinal assets on Bitcoins and then deposit into the Bitcoin address that's provided by Solana virtual machines and then maintain another version on Solana. They can start DAO, they can do NFT files or any DeFi strategy on top of it. Interestingly, I was just talking to a few teams in Korea as well. You know, what Zeus does here is not just only one version BTC. We want to enable more than 10 version BTC on Solana. There could be KR BTC. It could be KR BTC targeting Korean Bitcoin holders locally in Korea and come up with additional yield, working with Camino, Jupiter's, Safe. So many DeFi protocols on Solana could potentially working toward this version of BTCs. Okay. And this is what I envision in 6 months later. Multiple version BTC coming on Solana using Zeus, KR BTC, JPY BTC, doesn't matter. It could be China version BTC on Solana as well. Targeting Solana ecosystem, making sure that on-chain usage for Bitcoin is actually happening on Solana right now. You know, I'm talking about statistics here. 6 months ago, we only have 800 BTC on Solana. Right now, there's over 4,000. It's still increasing day by day. On-chain data doesn't lie. What's going to happen in the next 6 months, 12 months, next year is that a lot of Bitcoin miners, retails, they want to earn additional yield from the true ecosystem that are provided by users. So I think Solana is by far the best layer at this point, providing on-chain yield.
Wow. Okay. All right. Recently, maybe since the beginning of this year, we've been hearing a lot about the newly adopted concepts like BitVM, OPCAT. Pre-confirmation, I'm not still sure about this. And block space derivatives, parallel EVM. These are all new concepts that came with the changes in the Bitcoin network's changes. And the role of some bridges have been introducing these concepts. Harsharn, how do you see Bitcoin L2 will evolve with these kind of new technologies?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is still theoretical. I think the beauty is that we have excitement back on Bitcoin. We have people building on Bitcoin. The forums are active. People are debating. I don't think we've seen a lot of this since like the 2017, 2018 period where there was a ton of discussion and multiple forks that happened at Bitcoin at the time. And so I think, you know, with the BitVM paper that was presented by Rob last October, that really kicked off, I feel like, a wave of how do we, you know, rethink Bitcoin and how does this look? I think the block space OPCAT, you know, it can enable a lot of the L2s. I think what you're going to see is you'll have L2s that go live with a mixture of things that can make them operational today. Because I think go-to-market matters a lot more than having the perfect tech day one, given that we've seen a lot of these chains adopt Bitcoin and we see the demand, and so you want to start capturing and building use cases. And depending upon how the tech is built out, you know, enabling something as Bitcoin evolves is something that is, you know, I think very normal over time. And so I think when we look at it from Meso's perspective, we are going to be a proof of stake chain with Evmos, so Tendermint SDK for the execution layer. TBTC is our way to get Bitcoin on Meso. For us, it's the only, you know, two-way, call it like trustless bridge, 51 out of 100 signer network, 240 nodes. And you know, one question that often comes up is, you know, what happens to Threshold Network when BitVM comes? It's like, well, we'll upgrade to BitVM. It's nothing, you know. And so I think for us, it's let's build the best product that we can today for people to use their Bitcoin in a culturally aligned manner. And then as the developments happen, I think there's a lot of competing theories. Depending upon the team you'll ask, they'll tell you, hey, BitVM's already here, or BitVM's here in 15 months, or whatever it may be. And I think for us, it's let's wait and see for those that are there, and how do we like work with them and contribute to the research and the development. And then once it's live and we see that, hey, this is the one that social consensus is kind of rallied behind, that's the one that I think a lot of L2s will then kind of follow or or accept. And I think one thing that I think you mentioned earlier, social consensus matters a lot more than pure tech. We've seen that across consumer products, you know, VHS versus others. You've seen that with many category leaders that win. They don't necessarily need to be the best. It's what people perceive to be the best or believe execute the best. And so I think that is going to be one of the key deciding factors for what a lot of people pick. Obviously, you'll have, you know, dissidents and someone that's like very focused on a certain thing that they will back one or another. But I think hopefully in the next year or two, we'll see which one kind of stand out beyond the herd we have today.
Great. Thank you. Luke, when these kind of new concepts appear, how do you personally and your company as a whole accept and adopt these things, and how do you adopt it to your service as well?
I think, you know, the thing about crypto is the exciting parts is that, you know, there's new concepts every day, right? Very exciting concepts every day. I think in the past 12 months alone, there's been, you know, intense, deep in, whatever, lots of things. I think the challenge is, one, really being careful about the concepts that actually create good value, and kind of also finding a way to, I think for startup teams, you know, you were asking, how do we adopt? I think the key part is in really trying to find a model of iterating really quick, so that, you know, you can test out these designs and ideas really quick. Does the tech work, or does it actually show signs of working? And then two, how do customers react? Do they like it, or at least do they show signs of liking it? So yeah, I think in kind of the innovation industry, you know, the startup industry, it's really really important to be able to iterate really quick, because there's tons of concepts every day, and that I think is the exciting part of the industry. Like for people who get bored really easily, don't want to, you know, be stuck on one design for like you know, too long. So yeah, I think being careful about value and then really focusing on iterating, those are kind of, yeah, key things for us.
That's very positive attitude, I guess. Thank you.
We try, yep.
All right, this is going to be the final question for all of you. But Justin mentioned a little bit about it, but what is essential with the L2 network is users and the developers community. How do you build and interact with the community for your L2 work? Start with Arwen.
Well, yeah, I think our guest speaker today already covered some of the points. It's all about like the real users.
Right.
So for developers, they are building something for users. So it is very important that we identify the real use cases and provide this playground for the developer communities. And also for us, this as infrastructure builders, it is very. Of course, we can provide like grants and other incentives for them, but it's also very important that we have this long-term companion with them. So the markets have these ups and downs. We have already witnessed a lot. And for builders, for developers, for community members, the loyal community members, they are not expected this kind of like short-term companion. So for us, it's like building the community from the day one and let them know that there will be a long-term companion with them and there will be long-term support from us.
Thank you. Justin?
Yeah, for sure. Like from our standpoints, for Zeus, you know, it's to avoid fragmentations. You know, there are so many layers right now. Layer 2, Layer 3, Layer 4. Who knows Layer 5, 6 next years? But essentially, what does user really want at the end of the day is usability. And Solana, right now, in terms of on-chain activities, are over 1 million addresses interacting on a daily basis. So I started wondering, do we really need Layer 2, Layer 3 on Solana? My question is no. Instead, we actually need a network extension on Solana, like Zeus, onboarding BTC, Litecoin, Dogecoin, all the UTXO chains out there are so-called untapped liquidity coming to Solana on-chain permissionless. I think there could be a lot of synergies with us onboarding these UTXO chain asset coming to Solana. There's even like projects on Dogecoins already, Dogefi, talking to us that they want to build a product between Doge and Solana, on-chain permissionless. So when you have that innovations, and then still maintaining the layer 1 experience on Solana, I'm very excited, for the next few months where Zeus go on mainnets, especially in October's. It's not about how many Bitcoin coming to Solana. It's about how many people have that visions, onboarding on-chain usage for all the UTXO assets out there. So
Thank you. Great. Harsharn?
Yeah, I think for us, it's about how do we do everything with Bitcoin? So building an end-to-end stack that's Bitcoin aligned, I think is kind of our big focus. And when it comes to users, I think distribution matters the most. I think for us, we have the benefit of the Thesis studio with Fold, with over 600,000 users in the US. We have TBTC, which is actively scaling across multiple EVM chains. There's a big push on Arbitrum and synthetics right now, and GMX. A lot on the ETH mainnet, just especially with like the WBTC custody change. We've seen a lot of debates happening. MakerDAO looking at it, Aave, a couple others. So I think for us, it's really about let's build a chain that's easy to use, easy to onboard. Let's figure out real-world distribution in Rails, as well as distribution across multiple EVM channels, so we don't necessarily need for hurdles between different chains. You have all the ETH L2s, you have ETH itself, you have Solana, and you also now have Monad and Berachain coming. So how do we basically create a network that connects everyone? And then if you want to have a end-to-end Bitcoin experience, that's where Mezzo comes in, and that's kind of how we kind of think about the space and the stack.
Great. Luke?
Yeah, I think for us, the key kind of focus is we're somewhat more like partnership focused and some of the more like consumer-oriented projects in panel today. So our kind of key focus is just to really serve like the L2s in this space and the other assets, and then other dApps that are trying to deploy on top of the Bitcoin ecosystem really, really well, because it is kind of a new design space. How to serve that technology well, and then also, together kind of trying to find the best sweet spot in the user side. That's kind of what we see as a key focus right now. Yeah.
Great. Thank you.